Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruit analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free option. I will be posting all of my regular recruiting content on the Patreon site. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, and everywhere. This is episode 82, BBQU Fallout and New Commits. In this episode, we will recap the most recent official visitor weekend, known as the BBQU event, and cover the big news coming out of that and other recruiting news impacting OU's current recruiting cycle. So as always on these news episodes, I'm going to lead off with commits. And we have two commits to talk about. The first one was a visitor this weekend at the BBQU. And the second one is the third member of the 2026 class to join to Verbal to OU. And it's a big commitment. So let's get to the 2025 commit. Wide receiver Emmanuel Choice from Lancaster, Texas. He was down to OU, TCU, and maybe Texas A&M trying to make a late run. His ranking right now is he's a four-star composite on on3.com, mainly due to being in their top 200. He's a high 3-star by everyone else. I guess with a good senior year, he could move up to maybe a low 4 on a couple other networks, but inside the wide receiver group, it's just so tough to move up a lot because there's just so many talented wide receivers across the country. Every year, the wide receiver group is just so loaded. His Huddle junior year film is really good. Sometimes when you're looking at a big wide receiver, you're just seeing a lot of sort of jump routes, fades, that kind of action. For example, Ivan Carrion's junior film had like a lot of that. And then his senior film was really different. It was a lot more. There was a greater variety of passes, and he just flashed differently his senior year. So back to Choice, he's running. He's doing all the routes. He's working out of the slot. He's doing what I would call a lot of the small wide receiver work in terms of routes. He's very fluid for a big wide receiver. He's making guys miss. He's a handful to bring down, though, in the open field. A couple of times it's taking 3-4 DBs to bring him down, and he's getting 5 or 6, additional yards. In addition, he's an excellent blocker out on the edge. He's putting DBs on their asses on a number of highlight plays where it's clear he's got no problem being a physical blocker. From the film, if you were looking for a fairly easy comp, I would go Nick Anderson. He does flash some good long speed. He blows by some DBs. He has to wait up for some passes because his quarterback can't quite get him the ball in stride. That's not going to be a problem at OU, especially with the guy we're about to talk about. So he's just Emmett Jones is sort of a big receiver guru or whisperer to use a term, and we saw that with Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson's improvements year over year under Emmett Jones, and Emmett Jones has recruited big wide receivers kind of everywhere. So Emmett likes big wide receivers, and he gets the most out of them. So Emmanuel has a chance to really outplay his recruiting rankings based upon what I see on film and what we have seen from Emmett Jones just after 1 year at Norman and sort of historically. It also gives the wide receiver room that has 4 wide receivers. Grayson Harris was in town for the BBQU weekend. That's the first time he's been in Norman, I believe, in 2024. So that was a good sign. And then obviously Elijah Thomas was there. And obviously OU just picked up Marcus Harris, the other Harris. So that combination of guys, you got, Grayson Harris is like 5'9", kind of the smaller slot. Marcus Harris is probably 6 foot 6'1". Elijah Thomas probably in the same size range. Both of those guys able to play slot or outside. And then you've got Nick Anderson. Sorry, I called him Nick Anderson because of that comp. Emmanuel Choice, who's more of that classic big flanker, big receiver. So you've got like a nice mix of body types. OU did that last year with Zion Kearney, Ivan Carrion, Zion Reagans, and Daniels. So you had 2 smaller, shiftier guys with speed, and then you had 2 bigger receivers. Although Zion Kearney, was really athletic enough to do just about everything. Similar to Emmanuel Choice, similar to Nick Anderson, if you see these themes kind of developing. So it's a good group. Now, I'm not sure where this leaves OU with Cortez Mills. He still seems interested in OU. He was very much, tweeting on social media on X after Choice announced. Seemed pretty excited about that. So could OU take 5 receivers in this class again? I guess. But, there's so many other bodies out there and so many other sort of, I would say, needs for OU. We'll see how things shake out. I guess I could take Mills, and then if Grayson Harris decides to go the baseball route, OU could just, if he decides he wants to do that, then OU could just say, hey, no big deal. We've got a 5th wide receiver, but there's no real signs that's going to occur. So we'll just see. And Cortez Mills would be right in the middle between, very similar to Elijah Thomas, not as big as, a little bigger, taller than Marcus Harris, but not as big and as tall as Emmanuel Choice. So you'd have a nice variety of receivers, which I think, is what Emmett Jones really wants. He wants a room where you've got different matchups, different personnel, and you never, whatever the defense is doing, Emmett wants to be able to roll out different receiver combinations to really test the skills of the defense. So the next commitment, is the big one. I love Emmanuel Choice on film, but it is hard not to get really excited about the fact that Jaden O'Neal is the quarterback for the 2026 class. He verbaled around sort of 4 o'clock Central Time. Well, it's like 4:20. 247 forced us to watch their recruiting show and watch 10 minutes of some Colorado guy go on about how great Dion was and how great a job Dion was doing. So that was pretty painful. But then we got Jaden O'Neal, and he was, I think he was sort of video streaming from his house. I think there's some trophies in the background. It might have been his room. And he quickly pulled out the OU chip, the chip that Brent gives all of the big time, all the guys that he's looking to commit, and you give Brent the chip to say that you're all in, sort of the Texas Hold'em all in thing. And he held the chip up on the live stream, kind of a cool moment there. Jaden had over 20 offers: Ohio State, Oregon, FSU, Tennessee, lots of schools, and even more schools kind of got wind that he was leaning towards OU and kind of went in different directions. Like Michigan would have loved to offer Jaden O'Neal, but they were so late in the process that they were kind of got clued in the fact that they didn't have a shot. Ranking right now, he's in the composite top 100. He's a top 5 quarterback by several services, and he's as high as top 3 by ESPN. He really could end up, if his junior year shows the kind of improvement from his sophomore year, and he's been doing great on the camp circuit all spring, just throwing the ball. There's a chance, I think, that Jaden could be a top 30, top 5 composite consensus top 5 quarterback in this class, and a potential 5-star. He is that talented, and you see it when you go to the film. The first thing you notice is his arm talent is elite. He probably throws the prettiest, most consistent deep pass, most accurate deep pass. Combine the three terms however you want, that I think I've seen from a high school quarterback in a while. So and the ball just flies out of his arm. It's like watching a major league pitcher who has a very consistent, smooth, repeatable motion, right? It's just like the ball just flies out of his hand. It's just so much velocity and pace, but there's just so much accuracy, and he's just dropping 40, 50-yard passes just, right into receivers' hands left and right. It's just go back. It's beautiful set of highlights to watch. This is kind of why I fell in love with him back in March, when there was talk that he was going to visit OU unofficially. I was like, well, I'll take a look at the film, and then OU offered. I was like, man, that's the guy I want OU to get. That arm talent is just ridiculous. And then you look at some of the other aspects of his quarterback play, and I think the number one thing I was most impressed with is his pocket presence. He has the ability to read that the pocket is collapsing, move up, reset, and still throw extremely accurate long passes from a pocket that's kind of collapsing. That he's found that he through his presence and reading what's going on and anticipation, he doesn't panic. He's able to shift around side to side or move up and still deliver just unreal passes. He's also got really good mobility, has a good sense of when a pass rush is getting to him. He shows in the highlights the ability to throw from different angles. He has this one sidearm throw that's just kind of beautiful, getting the ball away before he gets hit. And he's also, when he's on the run, he's also, kind of able to change the platform he throws from. And he's very accurate throwing on the run. Now, he's not Kyler Murray. He may not even be Jackson Arnold speed-wise, but he has excellent functional mobility. He has numerous plays where he's just, breaking the back of the defense. They're doing everything right. Pass rush is getting to him. Everyone's covered, and he just breaks containment and scrambles for the 15 yards and moves the chains. Kind of those back-breaking plays where you do everything right. You should get him off the field, and he then escapes containment, escapes the rush, and is able to pick up 10, 15 yards. Now, if there's a gap, he's able to go for 30, 40 yards. He does that on a couple of occasions, but he's not out there trying to run over people or risk his health. He's making informed professional decisions about not getting hit, getting the yards, but not getting hit, which in the SEC is probably a smart move. If I had to do a comparison, he's got a kind of the frame that reminds me of former Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson. He's 6'3", 215, so he's kind of a big kid like that. He in an interview I watched today with I believe it was the Sooner Scoop, he mentioned C.J. Stroud as someone who he kind of models his game after a bit. And I could see that. He looks a little bigger, and maybe I think he'll be a little thicker than C.J. It wouldn't shock me if he's not 6'3", 6'4", 225 by the time he enrolls at OU or is playing college football. So he's a bigger kid. But that comparison works in terms of sort of playmaking and sort of poise. There's a lot of two initials that drive OU fans a little bit crazy, but I'll use them. There's some Caleb Williams to this sophomore film. There really is. He's just excellent. Making plays, just the command. He's just showing a lot. And if you talk to some folks that, if you talk about the buzz that was around OU camp when he showed up, and this was about 2 weeks ago, I think at this point, there was that same sort of sense. Everyone's like, man, that guy commands a presence. He's got a presence to him. So, how big a pickup is this? For the QB room in general, it's just huge. For the 2026 class to get their leader, the quarterback, he's already talking about kids he wants to recruit and players he wants to recruit. It's a huge win for it's a big win for Seth Luttrell, and for the OU program in general. There was a sense, well, what's OU going to do QB recruiting wise now that Lincoln Riley's gone? We'll get Jackson Arnold, and then we'll get Mike Hawkins, and then we'll get Kevin Sperry. And now, there's a little bit of concern. Well, what are we going to do now that, Jeff Lebby's not around? We're going to get Jaden O'Neal. And OU has offered some 2027 QBs to, earlier than I ever imagined previously OU doing. So, Luttrell knows what he wants and is making offers and is getting that process going. When you think about the 2026 class, you've got Jonathan Hutton, who could be a top 5 running back. I think he could be even higher than that. He could be a 5-star running back. And I think Jaden O'Neal could be a 5-star quarterback. And I can't remember the last time. Well, I do remember the last time I think that OU had a 5-star quarterback and running back in the same class. And that was a 50-50 kind of hit rate for the Sooners. For those that don't remember, that would be Adrian Peterson, hit, and Rhett Bomar, miss. But we'll see. We're way past those guys. So again, it's just two top 100, 2 top 50 guys right off the bat in the class is just a fantastic start for the Sooners. Again, I couldn't be more excited about Jaden O'Neal being being the potential future OU quarterback. I've been in love with that guy. If you've been following me on Twitter, I've been touting him. And he was my preferred choice over other quarterbacks. I like Deron Coleman and Jonas Williams, the quarterback from Illinois. Jonas never came to throw at OU because he kind of got he was reading the writing on the wall that he was supposed to come in this last week, but he never came in because the writing was on the wall that Jaden O'Neal had basically taken the OU QB spot for 2026. So that's all positive. That's all great. So let's get to the negative news. Max Granville verbal to Penn State today. I'm recording this late Monday night. It's a very strange recruiting. When you have Steve Wiltfong, who is, On3's national recruiting guy and supposed to be as in touch with recruiting as anybody, he went from A&M to OU to Penn State in about 24 hours. So it's a strange commitment. Penn State is probably a better fit for Max Granville. Max Granville's 6'2", 6'3", 230. He's muscled up already. He is in great shape. So he is probably 6'2", 235, 240, 245 at most. Very similar player to R. Mason Thomas in some aspects. I think OU was pitching that, but Penn State was pitching that, we have Chop Robinson. We've had guys like that playing that position. This is the position in our defense, and it's an NFL draftable position. So I think Max was leaning towards that. Looks like A&M was not as much of a player as some folks thought. So it's interesting what's happened there. Is this one to keep an eye on? If R. Mason Thomas has a great year rushing the passer and OU's having a great season, wouldn't shock me if OU didn't come around to Max Granville again, depending upon what else happens with the defensive ends and the D-line recruiting in the class. But for now, Granville's heading to Penn State, and OU seems to be moving on. Also, linebacker Elijah Melendez is tweeting that he's 100% sticking with Miami. It's kind of a tough flip situation. for OU with Miami getting this last official visit. It could be any number of factors. He's been verbal to Miami for a while. Is this something OU could come back around to? I guess. Well, again, we'll have to see what they do at linebacker for the rest of the class and where they are with their numbers, which I think are going to be the biggest issue with OU doing any kind of sort of poaching this fall. I think the numbers are going to make that a little difficult depending upon how things go with the next half dozen kids or so. Then we have the Ty Haywood visiting saga. He went to FSU. He then posted that he has a final three of FSU, Bama, and OU. Bama forecasts are starting to appear, and some flips are starting to be put in. Completely understandable. Barring some other data point, which we don't currently have, it looks like Bama. We on the Dumb and Dumber. Are you telling me we still have a chance? Well, until he provides an exact time frame for a verbal commitment, there's always a possibility that Ty could push his decision out to the August, somewhere sometime in August, before his senior year starts. And that could, in theory, give OU a chance to say, Ty, please, can you head up for the party at the Palace event? We can't make it an official visit, but it's a short drive from Denton. Can you please drive up so that we can reconnect with you, at least reconnect with you one last time before you make a decision? We didn't get the chance to use an official visit with you. But please come up. Bill will be available. Brent will be available. We'll make time for you if you're able to drive up. So if you're saying there's still a chance, there's, I guess, still a chance. And the long shot theoretical sort of theory that I put out there that Lincoln Cure could choose Oregon, which in some way might give OU a limited shot at Deshaun Brom. Well, Lincoln Cure chose K-State. Deshaun Brom visited Oregon, and he's deciding, I think, in about 3-4 days. So I think we can call that that fairy tale wish officially dead. So that's the majority of the negative news. You're always going to lose. I mean, it's crunching time. It's decision time. You're not going to always keep up with everybody. You're going to lose some. You're going to lose track of folks. Lose battles. This is just recruiting. This is just the way things happen. So let's wrap up with a discussion about the uncommitted weekend visitors that I haven't already mentioned. And the first one who has now moved up the charts, I think, in terms of significance for this class, is Smith Arogbo, the defensive end from the Houston area. He should be announcing on 7/1, according to some social media traffic. Whereas OU was perhaps, when they thought they were getting Granville, wondering if they could fit in Arogbo in the class, they now have a clear spot for him. OU should be making him a huge focus and priority. And I love Arogbo on film. He's a much neater fit for the OU defense. Granville has a much higher floor, but Arogbo has a higher ceiling. He's just bigger, longer, and they're basically the same sort of explosive kind of talents and pass rushing talents. But Arogbo's 6'6", not 6'2". So that kind of length and wingspan just make him potentially right coaching, right development. He's 6'6", 255, and just a terror off the edge, and a much clearer fit for OU's defensive structure. The other guy that just fits everything I just described is C.J. Nixon from Weatherford, Oklahoma. Everything's pointing towards an OU verbal very soon, and he looked bigger in the photos that I saw of him on campus. He looked like he might be every bit 6'6", 235, 240, not 215 or something like that. He looked bigger. He looked like 235, 240 range. Looked great. Just long again. And, he's an elite top 100 guy, I think, once everything works out nationally. there's more film on him and folks can get a chance to see him this fall, I think that's a clearer fit for him, that he's that elite. He's dropped a little bit in the rankings because he's been playing basketball all the time, so he hasn't been at camps. He hasn't been at camps impressing folks or doing official visits or really getting any buzz. He's just been playing basketball and doing a good job at that. So Amarian Robinson, the safety from Arkansas, he's now pointing towards a decision after July 4th. It's probably OU, Oregon, fighting back and forth. Like I said, OU got the last visit in. They've had a long relationship with Amarian. He's been to campus a number of times. To date, these are the battles Coach Hall has been winning, with a little help from Coach Valai. So we'll see what happens there. If they miss out on Robinson, then safety becomes kind of a question a little bit. And we'll have to just check back on that once we get a decision from Robinson. The big-time five-star offensive tackle, Andrew Babalola, was on campus. He was talking up OU in a post-visit interview with On3. Sounded all very positive. Sounds like Stanford's involved. Michigan is trying to stay in. I have a hard time knowing where Missouri is on this, but some folks think Missouri's right there. I don't hear Babalola really talking up Missouri in interviews that often, but, we'll see. I didn't think Granville was going to choose Penn State, so who knows? Again, we still have no exact time frame on a decision from Babalola. Something in the late July, early August time frame, I think probably is reasonable. So we're still in a holding pattern with the four big offensive tackles in terms of a decision date. It looks like Haywood's drifting away from OU, but we still don't have a decision date. And everything's positive from Babola, Rogers, and Fasusi from their three visits, but we still don't have any decision dates. So the other two guys who visited, who were kind of on the periphery a bit, I don't know if periphery is the right word, but Christian Jones, the linebacker from Nebraska, no real feedback right now on that visit. It's hard to know if OU's pushing for him. Is he really interested in OU? What is he? I'm not sure what he's looking for in terms of fit for a school. And then Brandon Brown, the defensive tackle from Florida, who strangely enough was posting his Tennessee uniform photos over the weekend, confusing me and some other sort of Twitter followers into thinking that he was actually at Tennessee, not at OU, but he was at OU. Looks like he had a good visit to OU. Is OU going to flip him? It's hard to say. I right now, I wouldn't think that OU is going to flip him from UT. LSU and Tennessee are obviously pushing hard on him as well. It's difficult to know where this is. Without Christian Evans and Cole Brewer, OU does need to get another defensive tackle in the mix. Kamori Moore visited. He's obviously committed as part of the class. But I would prefer OU was putting all their efforts and all their eggs in the Floyd Boucard basket to make a huge push on him and make him part of the class. Mekhi Williams-Lee from Atlanta is probably still floating around in that mix as well, but I think he's probably heading to NC State unless something else in recruiting has changed. So the only other thing is there's still forecasts and predictions for Cade Pietrek from Fargo, North Dakota to commit to OU. Obviously, he's listed as a defensive end. He's a big kid. He's 6'5", 255, maybe 260. Still carrying that weight very well. I think I like Cade in terms of his positional flexibility. He could be a big 3-4 defensive end. You could move him inside as a 6'5", 290 pass rushing defensive tackle. So I think with him, with Shield Knight, and hopefully with Nixon and Arogbo, you've got a nice mix of skills and talents to be added to the defensive end group. So that's right now all the news we have in terms of OU recruiting. I'll be back later this week with an update, talking about if there's commitments coming up. We'll be back with a commitment show. If not, we'll be back with just an update, hopefully with some news about some of the offensive linemen, and hopefully with some news about some more commitments being scheduled from OU targets, and maybe some idea of what's going to go and what's going on with them, and where OU might be adding additional personnel to the 2025 class. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and please don't forget to leave a rating. Also, just another reminder, please visit patreon.com/Sooners360-817 to subscribe for more recruiting content from Sooners 360. And that Patreon site is directly supporting this podcast, which I hope you're enjoying. Thanks again.